1974, late December. On that sunny winter day, a collector's car approached the city, when suddenly a police officer appeared on the road. According to regulations, the collector's cars were forbidden to stop, but he was a police officer. The car stopped, and suddenly Santa Clauses appeared to the left and right.
Наступающим!
The collector smiled because New Year is coming soon. Meanwhile, the Santas approached and started shooting. The police officer joined in. When shots were fired, they moved to the car. A couple of minutes later, the lock was picked, and the robbers escaped with bags of cash. Their loot was several million rubles. It's no secret that attacks on collectors were common in the USSR, but such a brazen and bloody attack? Never before the police had seen something like this.
Гильз нет.
So the robbers either took them away or fired revolvers. The policeman's behavior was strange. Why did he give up?
Да, работали профессионалы.
And even stranger phrase, how can a policeman admire the criminals? That could never happen.
And it never happened. This whole story is just a fantasy of robbers, planning robbery of the collector's car on the New Year's Eve. But in reality, everything turned out a little differently. This story is about how Santa Claus doesn't often give people things, but sometimes can take them away. But first thing first, my name is Tommy, this is From Russia with Crime, and we begin.
The Engels City, an ordinary winter day. People are buying goods at a grocery store, when suddenly
Деньги сюда, быстро!
from the investigation notes. The saleswoman in the store stayed calm, and instead of handing money over to the robber, began throwing it out of the register onto the floor. When the robber was attempting to collect the scattered banknotes, a customer suddenly attacked him from behind. After a brief struggle, a shot rang out. The customer was wounded in the shoulder. The robber rushed for the exit, but another customer, a very young man, jumped on him. He was holding a bottle of vodka. The sound of breaking glass followed by a gunshot. Despite fierce resistance, the robber managed to escape. From the investigation notes. Having arrived at the place, the police witnessed the following scene. The store floor was covered with glass and shards. Also, there were bloodstains. Two people with gunshot wounds lay in the sales area. They were receiving the first aid. No one saw the robber's face, but among the customers was a young artist with a good memory. She quickly drew two portraits, one with a mask on and other without. After looking at the composite sketch, the police immediately had a theory. Perhaps the attacker was a Romani?
In the USSR, like in modern Russia and like everywhere else in the world, the Romanis were engaged in many activities. But there is one peculiarity. None of these wonderful activities were connected to honest labor.
Of course, there weren't so many activities like today. For example, in the 1970s, drugs and drug users were almost non-existent in the USSR, so the most profitable business were unavailable to the Romanis. But begging and fortune-telling, namely the fraud, were popular.
Furthermore, in the USSR, the Romanians were engaged in quite an interesting business – making fake clothing. Due to the Soviet policy, it was quite difficult for anyone to buy a decent pair of jeans or a jacket. But this could be easily bought from the Romanies. Levi's, America. And the people sincerely believe that they were buying genuine American jeans. However, their belief didn't last long. Наивные. An inspection of the Romanists' workshops gave nothing. No one knew who the attacker was, or they just pretended like they didn't know. Then, the investigators came up with the idea of getting information from the Romani women.
The investigator Yuri Vikharev knew exactly what the Romani women did and where to look for them. As soon as he approached the house, he immediately spotted the woman. The policeman knew the entire plan from start to finish. A friend of the Romani woman, dressed in ordinary clothes, approached her from the other side. From Yuri Vikharev's notes. To lure the victim, the Romani woman's friend approached her and loudly thanked her for help. The reason could be various: a cured illness, a better personal life, and much more. Seeing such a review, a future victim couldn't resist. Meanwhile, the Romani woman played the role of a saint, not taking money.
Дорогая, деньги не мне, деньги духом.
The woman brought the money to the cemetery and asked the spirits for help. As soon as the victim left, the money was immediately confiscated from the spirits and placed in the Romani's pocket. But that day, she had no idea that an experienced detective was on her trail.
The policeman offered a deal – cooperation in exchange for freedom. The Romani agreed, but she strongly insisted that she had never seen the face in the picture and that the robber wasn't a Romani. Judging by her speech, the investigator realized she was telling the truth.
Канун Нового года – это густой запах хвои, блеск игрушек и мороз. А главное – подарки.
In Russia, we have our own version of Santa, called Father Frost. Unlike his American colleague, he doesn't come through chimney at night, but he comes through the front door himself. Often, the role of magical grandfather belongs to a neighbor or the best friend, but kids are simply delighted. Наступающим вас Новым годом! And as usual, the Father Frost brings gifts, but in exchange for something.
Рассказывай стишок.
Кто? Я?
Ну не я же.
Ладно. В лесу родилась елочка, в лесу она росла. Зимой и летом стройная, зеленая была.
Да, ну и стишки у тебя. Ладно, Новый год же. Держи подарок.
Спасибо. But in our story, the kids didn't receive any gifts.
It was a dark, frosty December evening. People were staying homes, so no one noticed two suspicious men standing outside the post office. A couple of minutes later, they moved to the window. From the investigation notes. In order to save money, government institutions were equipped with alarms only on the doors. 2 seconds later, the burglars were inside. Their target was the safe. A drill went to work. A few minutes later, the door was open. The thieves look inside, anticipating a luxurious life. The safe contained boxes, probably jewelry,
Чё это?
but it turned out to be the New Year's gifts, candies and oranges. Among them was a Santa Claus suit, which the thieves also grabbed.
It would seem that a couple of boxes of candies and a Christmas suit can hardly be called a jackpot, but our story is just beginning.
A few days later, the thieves visited a small rural bank. They decided not to bother with the safe. They simply broke down the door with a crowbar. And again, no luck. Only 88 rubles, about $100, were stolen. But there was something else in the safe. Besides the money, the criminal also stole a revolver. Zaporozhets, one of the most affordable Soviet cars. Yes, it doesn't look like Cadillac or Mercedes, but it's extremely cheap. Generally, the topic of the cars in the USSR and Russia is very broad and extremely interesting. Someday, I'd like to create a separate channel where I could buy and show you cars made in the USSR and modern Russia. Let me know in comments if you are interested in this type of video. One night, a distinctive sound was heard in the Slava Trudu newspaper's office. It was the sound of a broken door lock. Two masked men entered the room.
Слава труду!
The keys to the garage were pulled out of a drawer. That night, Slava Trudu newspaper lost its official car, a little Zaporozhets. From the investigation notes. The criminals robbed everything like it was a 9-to-5 job. Over a couple of weeks, several banks, several post offices, and several stores were robbed. Meanwhile, 1974 was coming to an end. Soviet citizens were preparing for the most magical holiday.
Так, и вот так. The decorations. Today, it's quite easy to click two buttons on Amazon or any other marketplace. And the decorations are already at your home. If you want something cheaper, you can always order from China. But people in the USSR didn't have such an opportunity. The Christmas decorations were quite rare. And if there are no decorations, the creativity comes to help. You need only a piece of paper and scissors. Couple of minutes, an adorable snowflake is ready. The kids learned this handcraft starting in kindergarten.
The Soviet people knew for sure that to make the new year memorable, you had to prepare for it. Women exchanged recipes for the New Year's dishes, dressed up, and created fancy hairstyles. The men also had a mission to get a New Year's tree. The criminals were also preparing for the holiday, but in their own way. They broke into the shopping mall where they stole a ton of stuff, fur collars and fabrics, even wigs. But the most valuable loot turned out to be the tools from the watch repair department. Now they could pick any lock, even on the collector's car.
There was only one thing left. Obviously, just one revolver wasn't enough to rob armed cash collectors. More guns were needed.
In the morning, the police inspected the robbed shopping mall. Saratov had never seen such brazen criminals. It was decided to set up an ambush.
Так. Вот так. Lottery. One of the most popular entertainments in the USSR. People bought tickets and awaited the results on TV. One of the most popular lotteries were 5 out of 36. Так. 8. Ну как 15-то? Опять все проиграл. But someone named Nadezhda has won 5,000 rubles, the price of a new car. But there were also free entertainments, like playing cards, played by everyone from kids to adults. They were in our story too.
One night, two police officers were in ambush in a bank branch playing cards. They were already spending their fifth night there. It seemed that everything was useless. The criminals wouldn't show up. Then suddenly, sounds came from behind the door. From the investigation notes. While being in ambush, the police officers heard the sounds of a lock being picked and the sounds of swearing. The lock remained locked for a long time. Finally, the door was opened and two men entered the bank. The policeman fired a warning shot into the ceiling. His colleague immediately grabbed his face. A brick chipped from the ceiling and hit him, but the detective assumed he'd been shot and began firing back. The intruders fell to the floor.
When the police officers, inspired by the arrest of the dangerous gang, began to tie up the robbers, they begged, like, "Please don't kill us, we're gonna open the safe ourselves." The strange phrase from criminals, isn't it? It turned out that the detainees were the bank employees who decided to perform an inspection. Luckily, there were no casualties.
But the real criminals somehow miraculously avoided all the ambushes. They were unstoppable. Over the next couple of weeks, several banks, a post office, and a couple of stores were robbed. And it seemed that the criminals were elusive. No clues, no witnesses. But then, unexpectedly, the police received a call that a dead body had been found on the street. From the investigation notes. Arriving at the scene and examining the body, the police discovered that the man had been shot, and the wound indicated that the fire had come from above. But there were no lampposts or trees nearby, only a 5-story building in the distance. While the police were guessing, how is it possible to hit a man on the head so accurately from 300 meters away, another surprise awaited them. Safe-cracking tools were found on the dead man, a goose foot and a ballerina. So, the dead man was a burglar? Then who killed them? His own people?
The police quickly identified the murdered man as a robber Krabov, nicknamed Crab, who has been recently released from the prison. The search in the house where the shooting could have come from was conducted, and a suspect was identified.
A certain Chushkin, also a criminal recently released from prison, but he wasn't home.
After a series of searches, Chushkin was found at his girlfriend's house. Realizing that there was no point to deny the facts, he claimed that he had joined the gang a couple of weeks ago, and before that, only 2 people had cracked safes, Chernikov and Markin. The arrest of the gang leaders was planned with particular attention. There was no chance for mistake. The criminals were well-armed athletes. Markin was captured professionally, without any noise, while he was leaving his apartment.
Many bankrolls were found in his home, hidden behind a rug on the wall. They also found the Santa Claus suits, planned to be used for the attack. But Markin's accomplice Chernikov nearly met disaster. It was quite easy to put him into the handcuffs, but while the search was underway and the police were retrieving hidden revolvers, Chernikov, sitting on the couch, was gradually moving toward the Christmas tree. Only the professional instincts of the investigator Vikharev prevented disaster. Noticing something wrong, the investigator turned around just as Chernikov jumped for the Santa Claus figure under the tree. After forcing the robber to the floor, Vikharev carefully examined the figure. And realized that the criminal's sudden movement was motivated not by the opportunity to make a wish or receive a gift, but by the grenade hidden behind the figure.
The robbers confessed to everything. During the investigation, the detectives couldn't help but respect the criminal's skills. But all these robberies were just preparation for the main mission.
The criminals knew exactly when and where the collector's car would arrive. All they needed was a disguise, a lock-picking tool, and plenty of guns.
Having collected everything they needed, Chernikov and Markin decided to find accomplices, because they planned getting involved into a shootout. But Chushkin and Crab instantly disliked each other. Crab was threatening to kill Chushkin. Chushkin decided to act first. He climbed into the attic of his own house and shot his accomplice in the head. Just before the new year, the court put an end to the case of the elusive gang. Chushkin received 10 years of prison. The gang leaders Chernikov and Markin were executed. Thus, the story of the gang of Santa Claus robbers has come to an end. And it was absolutely right. The new year should be celebrated with only the brightest and kindest moments. And I wish you all the best in the new year, and really hope that everything we're talking about here will remain only on your screens and will never happen to you in real life. And this was Sabir and Tommy. Merry Christmas to you and your families, and a Happy New Year. До скорого! Ладно, инкассаторы уже должны приехать.